Entrepreneur who made it without failing so many times before that. That is the test. Failing is the stepping stone to get to where you have to get, right? So if you're a young guy or girl, late teens, early 20s, and you figure, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be able to control my own time and to, integrate my own money. The main advice that I would give you is prepare yourself emotionally, because in order to be able to get to that point, you will fail. And how you handle those failures is what's going to determine how high you're going to get, how far you're going to get.
What's going on, guys? We got a great podcast here today. As you know, we did $3.5+ billion in sales last year alone. A big part of it came from this man right here. He is an icon agent. He's also a team leader here at EXP with a big production team and revenue share organization growing. And it's starting to get pretty big, up to almost 40 agents and growing. But really today, what I want to talk about is overall entrepreneurship and how the entrepreneurship journey starts and how it ends to a successful story like Alex is on here. So Alex Camargo is on the show today, and we're going to talk about his journey of how he came here as an immigrant, started out as a young entrepreneur like many of you guys did. It went horrible, imploded, businesses catastrophic all over the place, failures, rise up, like taking off and everything imploded, right? We're going to talk about how he came back from that, the mindset, the things he did, and also how the impact of his family really helped him get to this level where he's at right now. But I'm gonna let him tell you the story. Let's get you on here, Alex. Grateful for your time. And let's kind of talk about how you got here in the first place and how you came to the country and where this entrepreneurship journey started for you.
I always appreciate your time, Connor. Thank you so much for having me here. So my name is Alex, and I'm a real estate agent in 2 states now. I'm predominantly in Connecticut, but also moved to North Carolina. I started working with real estate about 10 years ago. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been able to, with a co-team leader, we've been able to grow a good-sized team where we are. And we've taken on a bunch of newly licensed agents, and we feel that we could have imparted this whole business into them and give them a good foundation. So that's, in a way, what we've been specializing in. But my story began as an entrepreneur began much earlier, right? So I was born in Brazil, and I moved to the States. I was 15 years old, and once you move to a different, like even if you move to a different state, like I just moved to a different state, there's a cultural shock, right? Sure. But moving to a different country as a teenager, not having a good grasp of what it is to move to a different country. Of course, I was dragged here by my mom, a single mom. So mom and dad in a single person. I owe a lot to her, especially for this opportunity, right? Sure. I think one thing that doesn't get mentioned enough, and you and I were talking about this earlier, is America is often overlooked by Americans themselves. But when you come from a different country, like, this is the land of opportunity, right? And you, as an immigrant, most of us will tend to go the extra mile, just because we wanted to be appreciative of this opportunity. So in my early days, during high school and out of high school, I started working with IT. I was fixing computers for people. I've only been employed on a W-2 for 3 years of my life, and I'm 38 years old right now. So I've been, like you mentioned, a serial entrepreneur, and I've failed often. I've failed. As a matter of fact, I've failed more times than I've succeeded. But the times that I've succeeded, because of my failures, have added tremendously to who I am as a person and to my life, right? So I've been around construction all of my life, right? So doing IT, I was mostly doing IT work for bars, restaurants, and specifically construction companies, right? I had friends who started construction companies that had no idea how to do their bookkeeping. So I would come in and introduce QuickBooks or whatever other bookkeeping software, and then help them when their computers weren't working, when the printers weren't working. And I've made a really good client base out of that. And you don't know which turns life will take you in, or if you believe in a higher power, like I believe in God, you don't know what God has in store for you. So in my early days, I feel that I was going through the motions, and it's just, it's hurdle after hurdle, and learning different businesses. And then when I became a real estate agent, I'm like, I'm exactly where I needed to be, because all of these failures all of these businesses that I've been in have helped me shape myself as a good agent, being in construction all my life or around construction all my life. I sometimes I often enter a home with a contractor or a flipper or an investor, and I run numbers for them faster than they can do it. I'm like, all right, so this is going to need a new roof, and this is going to need new siding and windows, and I'm quickly, as they're thinking about what they need, I'm already running numbers on my spreadsheets, right? So that has helped me a lot. One of my biggest failures was in when the market crashed in 2008. I had a countertop store. So I did granite marble countertops, and we sold flooring and all of that. And of course, when the market got tight and crashed, I went with it. And looking back, I don't want to say I was depressed, but really not knowing what depression is, maybe I was. But for 2 or 3 months after that, I'm like, I got to find something else, right? But the pain of that failure helped me stop and analyze life, right? Who am I? Right? I always tell people that I owe a whole college degree to that business because a friend of mine started the business and then I took over, and then I had employees and I had to deal with high rent because it was an expensive town. And once the market crashed, I learned a few things about myself. And I learned a lot of things about business, right? So my whole college degree was the knowledge that I got from that. I'm no good with employees. I'm great with, I want to say that I'm great with agents because there's so many agents in our team, but I'm no good with employees. And there's a difference there, having 15 agents or
Big
15
difference.
different, yeah.
Big
And, I look back at that moment and I said, okay, there's a few things that I've learned about myself here. I no longer want to have employees in the future, maybe 1 or 2 at max, right, if needed, but not the 10 or 14. I also don't want to have overhead, right? I want to be able to control my overhead. I don't want to get into a situation where, I'm in this $4,000 a month, 800 square foot rental, right? Just because when things shift, then now you're forced to go and make decisions that you didn't want to make or that you're not prepared to make. Right, so those were a couple of the businesses that the IT business I did it until about 5 years ago, but the countertop business was a big painful failure, but that later turned out to be a good teacher.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So like, for one, for you guys, if you're new to entrepreneurship, most people fail in their first businesses. And that's where they, just like this, they learn the experiences they take forward to build their successful ones. I took on a high liability, expense-driven business for one of my first businesses, which was really kind of where I got in trouble and how I got into debt. I didn't have a lot of employees, but let's talk about those here real quick. So like, as far as options to get into business, there's a lot of them. You can either use your time or your money or both. And there's opportunities like EXP has with the revenue share model. There's all sorts of companies out there that will let you grow businesses with your work ethic, your time, not so much your bank account. How much was it that was it the expense to run the business that got out of control, or was it the management of the people? And then when it came to the employees, was it you didn't have the ability to pay them, and the pressure of that was why you're like, I'm never going to deal with that again? Or like, kind of like, what was the real reason the business went under? And just so some of these entrepreneurs are kind of in that same spot, can emotionalize. And also for some, maybe give your advice on a new entrepreneur starting out, probably to not go into a high monthly liability business that also has a lot of working parts and a lot of stress and demand, where you have payroll and things that you can put up that like really stress you out, and having to take responsibility for other people's families and their bills.
Yeah, that's a great.
But I think
that's a great point that you made there. As far as the employees, we have to understand that it's not just a paycheck. When you consider that 70-something% of this country lives paycheck to paycheck, that paycheck represents all of their expenses, all of their liabilities, everything that needs to be paid at the end of the month or at the end of the week, right? So if you're late with that paycheck, let's say payroll is late for whatever reason, right? And then 5-10 people depend on you. That's a huge burden on your shoulder.
Pressure, for sure.
Yeah, so a lot of pressure there. The business itself failed because of me not being able to compartmentalize each department of my company that I worked in, and in the beginning, I was doing 85% sales and 15% management, right? Bookkeeping and payroll and all of that. Towards the end, I was doing 50 or 60 or 70% management because, things, sales weren't coming in as much because the market it completely shifted, right? And everything was going sideways. So I noticed that at that time, that's my period of learning about myself. I noticed that at that time, like I needed to take a step back, and I didn't, right? But I needed to take a step back and see it doesn't. Everything else has to be able to be put to the side, and we need sales, right? We need to bring money in. 95% of the problems that I was facing at that time would have been fixed by money. But if the person who brought the business in, if I wasn't spending my time, 80-90% of my time selling, then that money wasn't coming in, which is an equivalent conversation that I have with agents, new agents or agents who join our team, or just agents in general that I talk to. You can outsource every other part of this career, this field, but if you're not good at generating leads, you're going to suffer, right? It's going to be an uphill battle for you, right? So get really good at that, right? So same thing with the business back then. It was a painful moment of not being able to identify that I needed to stop everything else and put everything else to the side as much as possible, just so I can refocus on selling. Whatever the efforts, this was 15, 17 years ago, right? So whatever the effort was, to sell, I needed to 10x that, because it was a downturning market and I just needed to create more, and I did it, right? So the college degree that I owe to that failure, to that failing business, is exactly that. It's learning those things, right? Yeah, you could have gone to school and spent $150,000 to learn the same things that I learned, probably at the same expense.
No, you probably couldn't even learn that. You'll never learn emotion management. So like a lot of people don't talk about emotional control and emotional awareness, and how do you handle, getting the emails out and the basic accounting when you have the pressure of, these people I care about, they're not gonna be able to pay their mortgage this month if I don't, if I don't turn a profit in this business. So you can't really learn some of that stuff. It has to be, at least not through books or pre-existing knowledge or sets. It has to be done through street justice, I call it, meaning getting out there and feeling the pain of others around you, and understanding why it went this way and how it went this way, how to avoid it in the future. So some stuff you just can't learn from a formal education. Has to be done through just getting out there.
Experience of education.
Yeah. So how did it all transition from there? So you got these learning experiences, which are crucial. So just so you guys know, you have to go through that failure stage. And then what? You took them, and how did that transition from that point?
You really have to. I've never heard of an entrepreneur who made it without failing so many times before that. That is the test. Failing is the stepping stone to get to where you have to get, right? So if you're a young guy or girl and you're in your late teens, early 20s, and you figure, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be able to control my own time and to create my own money. The main advice that I would give you is prepare yourself emotionally, because in order to be able to get to that point, you will fail, and how you handle those failures is what's going to determine how high you're going to get, how far you're going to get, right? So I failed, and for a couple of months I was in la la land and trying to figure out, okay, what else to do, and I went back to what I knew how to do, right? So I went back to IT, because it was always my safety net for all these years, right? And then I had a couple of other businesses that never, like all of these businesses put together, never really generated the money that I wanted to make a year, right? I felt that, okay, I'm a smart guy, and I'm tired of people around me saying, you're a very smart guy, but I was missing that one factor. I'm like, what am I missing that I can put all my intelligence towards, right? Because I have friends in different businesses who are about my age, and now they make millions, and I look at them, and not a single ounce of jealousy. I learn a lot from them and how they run businesses, but I look at them this early in life, right? Late 30s, early 40s, and they're able to make millions based on not being really exceptional in anything, but being consistent for 15, 20 years in their businesses, right? So I learned that from my friends, and from other people. I'm like, all right, I need something that I can stick with for 10, 20 years, and I will see it through. It will make me money, right? As long as I do it correctly, as long as I don't take advantage of people, as long as I use um, my foundation, a good foundation to run those businesses or to run that one business, then it's going to flourish, right? So I put a couple options in. I felt that at that time I needed a career change, right? So I laid a few options in front of me, and I figured, okay, can I do mortgage? 2014 mortgage was a lot of paperwork. A mortgage file was this thick. I'm like, no, I'm not made for that. My attention span, and this is another thing that I realized lately, my attention span is good for 3 hours. And whatever you need from me, I can give you my max. I can give you my best within those 3 hours. But after that, I'm no longer as effective, right? So even as I plan out my days, it's 3 hours block doing real estate, all day long, 3 hours for paperwork. And then I got to go see clients or have coffee or have lunch with a friend or client. And then I can do another 3 hours worth of work, or I can do some showings and then come back and do some more work. But if you ask me to do a full day worth of paperwork, I can give you that, or I can give myself that. Right. So learning these things about yourself, very important. Like, what are your strengths? Right. So my strength within my businesses now, mainly a real estate, I'm a good salesperson. Right. So I have an assistant that comes in and does everything else that I'm not good at, or that I don't want to dedicate time to, all the paperwork and all that. Right. So that turning point brought me to real estate. Right. And I'm like, all right, new career, the sky's the limit. I knew people making millions in real estate. It's a lot of work, right? So you really got to figure out how much are you willing to sacrifice to get to, where you want to get. But I'm like, I can do this because it's some paperwork, but also I get to be in new homes every day, and I get to be in homes that are for sale and bringing clients and different clients. I can break up my days where it doesn't really, I'm never going to burn out by doing it that way. And it's been 10 years and I can still say that it works great for me, because 3-4 hours of whatever it is, paperwork and all of that, calling clients, calling prospects, but then being able to break that day with showings and meeting new clients.
Before we go on, let me touch on that, because it's really interesting. That's kind of like the exact process that I'd gone through, where I struggled with some businesses and some ups and downs was in the insurance space. And I just committed to the real estate space because I knew as a vehicle that at the end of the road, that it was like a guaranteed I'm going to get there. Like, there's so many different paths in real estate, whether it's commercial, residential, farm and land, that everybody that stuck it out has gotten there to the end. And so I tell people the two things it takes to be massively successful is you have to believe in yourself and you have to believe in the vehicle that you're driving. Now, a lot of people don't pick a vehicle, meaning is it the real estate space? Is it starting a restaurant that has a guaranteed track record of creating enough people that hit the level of success that they want? And maybe that say they want to make $1 million a year, they're joining something that only one person out of a million makes $1 million a year. They're never going to stick it through. So you need to have a vehicle that has a big long-term outcome to it. And it's the combination of the belief in ourselves, which you pointed out that you failed over and over, that built the confidence, the perseverance, the mindset that, hey, I've been knocked down this hard before, I can keep going. So once you build that self-esteem and that belief in where you trust yourself, where you're saying, everybody's telling me I'm smart and you're capable. Now you have step one. I believe in myself no matter how hard things get. You need to find a vehicle, and the combination of having a vehicle that you believe in that has a long-term outcome that's worth fighting for. And the more you believe in yourself, those two combined go together to create the energy, which causes the action, which causes the manifestation results and everything around it. So what I'm trying to get at is, if you don't believe in yourself, which comes through standing up against adversity and pushing through it and standing up and keep going forward, and you don't have a long-term vehicle that's going to have the potential to get you to what your biggest goals and dreams are, you're going to back down. The energy won't be there. At some point, you're going to step up and step down and you're going to quit. So it's very important to understand that process, which he explained there, but I really wanted to point that out for you guys, because a lot of you guys are chasing something that doesn't have a road at the end that you want to show up on, even if you're driving the vehicle fast. But let's get back to the story. But it is interesting that you kind of came to real estate the same way I did, which is through mass failure. And I saw it as something that no matter what, if I stuck it out, I would get there. And really, to be honest, business is not an intelligence test, which I think a lot of people think it is, because we're so taught through school, get an A, get 100 on a test, and they're tying success to scores on a test. That's not what makes you successful in real life. Perseverance is what makes, mental toughness, standing up once you got knocked down, because you can get up every single day and just keep going. So if you're the smartest person in the world and you get knocked down, but you don't stand up, you don't go very far.
Yeah.
You're the dumbest person in the world, get knocked down every day and stand up every day, and you're moving farther than the smartest person that won't stand up again. So perseverance is by far, and patience, combination of those is very important. But so now you're in real estate. How did that all play out? Did it start out well for you, or did you kind of struggle in the beginning of your real estate career? Did it take you, was it kind of a good start that you'd already gone through these other failures?
It was a good start, right? Because in doing IT work for a whole bunch of people in construction and bar owners and restaurant owners, they were mostly self-employed people. When you fast forward 10 years after I started, they are all my clients in IT, right? And because they started their businesses 5-10 years prior to that, now they have a little bit of money to invest. Now they're buying their first homes. Now they're buying investment properties. And I was the person with keys to the office and access to the bank accounts and access to their homes. So trust was already established a long time ago, right? So when they thought about buying a home, a few of my clients actually left their agent who they bought their homes with the first time, because I wasn't licensed at that time, and it was an automatic decision to come work with me. Like, Alex is here, let's give Alex the opportunity, and we trust Alex, we know Alex, let's work with Alex. So, but I was still going back to the consistency. My attention was still spread between many different businesses, and I felt that at some point that was going to have to change, right? Because I'm making good money for me to make a living, but I'm not building a future. And a lot had to change along the way. And probably the biggest change point in my life was meeting my wife, getting married, because at that time I learned that my money was no longer my money, was our money. Because prior to that, if my 20s were rocky, up and down, made a lot of money, lost a lot of money. And a lot of money could be subjective, but
Welcome to your
made
20s for most people.
Yeah. But at that point in my 20s, at my lowest, I slept in a vehicle at a park and ride for 5 days, right? Just because, and it was out of pride. I could have gone back to mom's house, but I didn't want that, right? And those were the most peaceful days that I had. I had a good connection with God and good conversations, right? It was a time to reflect. So I made a promise to myself. I'll never let it get to this point again. This is my rock bottom, right? But even looking at it just as myself, right now, without my family, sleeping in a car is not bad, right? It's not, the people struggle with real struggles, right? People go through, through. My wife is a mental health clinician, and the anxiety attacks, and like people struggle with a lot more that they can't control. If I'm sleeping, for those 4 or 5 days, if I slept in a vehicle, it was a choice, right? And I could have done something about it, which I did, right? So when you fast forward to about 5-6 years ago, when we got married, I told myself, well, a few things, right? We can never go back to that, right? I can never put my family through that. I can sleep in a vehicle, no problem, but I can never allow my family to go through that, like to be in that position, right? I also understood that my money was no longer my money; it was our money, right? So whatever money I make is our money, and two people now are steward of this money, right? So we have to be responsible, right? And so the extra spending stops. The buying electronics. In my addictions are electronics and food, right? I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't go out anymore. So this is what I spend money with, right? So, but I needed to create budgets. Like, my first budget didn't start until 5 years ago. I'm 38 years old. But that's when things shifted at that time, where I understood all of that, right? And then I also had to come to a consensus that I needed to be laser focused about real estate. For my first 4 years, I was selling about 10 homes a year. It was good money for the area that I'm in, and I was supplementing that income with the 2-3 other businesses that I had at that time. But figure, okay, I can make $100,000 a year doing all these 4 businesses, but I'll never be able to make $100,000 a month. and I believe in my potential, and eventually I'm going to make $100,000 a month, right? But if my attention was divided between 4 different businesses, until I made one, like I got one of these businesses to be producing at that scale, then I needed to drop everything else. So I dropped everything else, and it was funny because I proposed the day we bought a house. So we found a house, we bought a house. That same day we left the attorney's office, and we drove into different cars, and I told my wife, let's go back to the house real quick just so we can take a quick look at it. She was like, we just came from the house because we went to do a walkthrough before the closing. And I'm like, no, let's go back one more time. And of course, I had friends lined up, and I had a friend playing guitar, another friend playing violin. So she beat me to a traffic light, and it was red for me and it was green for her. So she was going to get to the house before I did. So I rushed there and I proposed that day. 3 weeks later, we moved into the house. We got married and moved into the house. And at that point, I told her, look, I feel like I catfished you into this, but we're going to struggle financially for the next maybe 5, 7, 10 months. But I need to drop every other source of income so I can make real estate work. And she's been fully supportive of that decision. She was fully supportive then, and along the way, she's been fully supportive of additional decisions as well. But that was my turning point. I needed to focus, right? Which is, I think a lot of agents, or a lot of people in business in general, like we had a good conversation in Orlando. And it was a step back, right? So I could do 2 or 3 steps forward.
Yeah, so it's important to know that you have to have the awareness that you're doing it while you're doing it. So if you know that it's a controlled setback, meaning you're slowing down to speed up is essentially what you're doing, but you knew exactly what you had to free up the time to be able to put the time to something else because the opportunity cost was better. And but I think a lot of people don't have that business maturity we talked about a little bit before this to do that. You see this all sorts of different business models, whether they're restaurant doing a renovation or a company bringing in a new system that they have to shut down to implement it and step back. Most people just want to keep on going on the marginal path and drifting forward instead of knowing what they need to do, which is stop things or regress a little bit so you can slingshot and pull forward. So it's like a boomerang. You're pulling back a little bit, but you're creating tension that when it flies forward, you're going to accelerate past where you were at and up past that even further. So it's crucial in business to be able to have that skill set and also the awareness that it needs to be done when it needs to be done, because a lot of people know it needs to be done, but they don't do anything about it. And that's where they just kind of drift along and they just average and average and average. But you have to be able to have that maturity to do that, to kind of step back and then push forward again.
Yeah, and that was I like how you describe it. That it's a controlled step.
So how does she take it? What was her?
She was very supportive. She used to work for a different company, and she now works for herself. But she used to work for a different company, and she made a good salary. And a lot played out within that year, right? It was a year of me doing that, but also a year of being newlyweds, right? So for most people, you have that honeymoon phase, and then for some people, that's when you bump heads, right? That's when you work out your differences, right? So it was a rough year, but I don't run from the struggle. I fully believe in the struggle, right? It's, to your point earlier today, if I were to start a new business now, I'm already looking at how can I fail? What ways am I going to fail in this business? Let me get there quick, right? Because even the failures in business in general, the way a real estate agent can sell 100 or 200 homes is by finding out the point of resistance that other agents didn't want to cross, right? So you fail there, you learn how to cross it, and then you cross it, and then you get to this, to 50, 100, 200 homes. Most other agents don't get past that point of resistance. Most agents don't get past that point of failure, right? So I'm fully appreciative of that first year of being married because we learned a lot about each other and we learned about our needs. And then we could also, I also looked at my business, right? And I learned what it was going to take for me to sell, 20, 30, 40 homes. In my area, you need to sell about 20, 25 homes for you to make a full-time living out of real estate. And I'm like, all right, now I have a full day, a full schedule dedicated to this. So for the first, I doubled my number of sales from the previous year to that first year, but it didn't double until the end of that year. So for the first 5, 6, 7 months, we struggled, right? And we constantly needed her help financially to cover mortgage, to cover the expenses at home. But then eventually at the end of the year, I was able to make it up. And that built us up, right? Because I know that my job is I'm called to be a provider, right? And not only a provider of financial means, but also a provider of emotional support and a provider of being there for her in many different ways, right? I needed that. I needed her being able to provide for us financially for 5, 6 months for me to know that I have a good support system in her.
Right. It's crucial.
Right. And so she's been awesome. She's been my rock. She's been supportive in every decision, right? So we just picked up. We planned this, right? But moving to a different state, and her trusting, me and trusting us that we were going to be able to make this happen, and we're going to be able to duplicate our success in a different state as well, has been a tremendous addition to what a good marriage already was. So it's been good.
During that window time, because I'm sure this is interesting because people all have husbands and wives and personal relationships and also businesses. She was supportive in the beginning. As it went along, was there any doubt that you were going to pull it off, where you're or you knew, okay, I shut these down, I have my time, it's just a matter of getting it and getting everything to kind of work right? Or was there ever any fear that it may not? And then did she change at all with her support along the way, where now she's getting angry at you, and was there any of that type of stuff going on, emotional fights over that? Or was it just the generic, hey, we're now married and living on top of each other, just the normal growing pains of a relationship type of stuff? Or did it, was the pressure of the business in that kind of mode where it has to catch up, did that cause some stress on the relationship?
Oh yeah, it definitely caused the friction. And the friction is, my wife is very punctual with all of her bills, right? So if the Verizon or the cell phone bill is due on the 1st of the month, then she makes a payment on the 31st, and then enter the real estate agent with an inconsistent income, right? So the first thing that I wanted to do is grab a hold of the finances. I'll run the bank account, right? Just because I knew that I can pay the cell phone bill late by 5, 10 days. It's not going to make a difference. Right. Some things have to be paid on time. Some things I knew I had some leniency. And we bumped heads a lot with that. To a point where a few months in, she didn't even want to look at that bank account anymore, just because of the amount of stress that caused. Right. She never doubted me and my ability to make money. Right. We bumped heads because of the growing pains of that process. Right. She understood that I could have continued the other businesses, right? But it was better for our family that I dropped all the other businesses, that I had more time for family, right? So we prayed a lot about this, and I gave myself 60 hours a week, 50 hours for a regular week, and then 60 hours if things got really tight, during the fall and the spring season for real estate. That's as much as I can work in a week. Right. Otherwise, I'm going to be stepping into my time with my wife, and now my time with my kid, my time at church, my time with my friends, or my time in all the other areas of our lives that make up who I am or make up who she is. Right. So we run, different groups in church and all that. So we needed to be able to have that time. So I had 50 hours a week to work. Right. With the other businesses, I was going to go past that mark every week. So she understood that this was needed. And then, you fast forward to lately, or last 3 or 4 months, when she needed to step out of her comfort zone and the company that she used to work for, and then open up her own business. And of course, I was there in a way financially to be able to make sure that transition was going to run smoothly.
So looking back, a lot of times we're going through things in the present moment. Sometimes I feel like adversities, fights, or problems, but looking back, a lot of times you realize these were gifts, or this is, hey, we're drifting apart, but actually that was where the relationship tightened and the hardships. Did you have that type of hindsight looking back at all that? And then you had a kid along the way, right? Did that cause another crazy bump in the road for entrepreneurs? Getting married is one. You're just getting a girlfriend or boyfriend because it used to just be you, and now you have someone else to look for, and then the family starts to grow. How did all that kind of play out?
You really have to. Yeah, we got married. I think I was 30. It was 5 years ago, so I was 33. You have to figure out, and it was easier for me to figure out what I wanted out of life because I was already in my 30s, right? And of course, you have all sorts of relationships in your 20s, or sometimes you get married in your 20s, but sometimes you get married in your 30s, and then sometimes you get married in your 40s, right? And the older you are, the more you can have a better outlook in life and trying to figure out what you want out of life, right? So what I wanted out of life was a family, was somebody to share my time with and somebody to spend my time with, and so we can grow together. Like I never wanted to be, I never wanted to be single. And I have a few friends who prefer life that way, right? I have plenty of friends who are single in their 40s and 50s, and they're loving life. Like I have other friends who don't want kids because they know that they cannot commit to a child, right? And it's great that they recognize this in their own lives, right? So when we got married, we planned out a couple of things, right? So let's get married. We're living in Connecticut. Let's be here for the next 4 or 5 years. But then I wanted a different life somewhere else, just because Connecticut gets really cold in the winter, and I wanted better weather. We're very outdoorsy. We're constantly, running different types of races and Spartan races and obstacle races. So we needed more time to train. We needed a better quality of life. So we figured we're either going to move to Texas. So I was going to be your neighbor, but we wanted to still be. Still can, yeah.
When you make
right. We wanted to be close to our family, right? So we moved to North Carolina. If I have an emergency tomorrow, even if I can't find plane tickets, I can still drive there. It takes me 12 hours. It's a good drive. So in that process of planning life, we felt, okay, let's have a kid in Connecticut, close to our families, right? My parents live there, her parents live there, where they can help us raise this child for the first couple of years. So we can have their full support, and there's no better support than a family when you have a child, right? You can pay for all the babysitters in the world, and that can only do so much, right? The fact that you can sleep at night or throughout the day if your child is being taken care of by your parents or my parents or her parents was priceless, right? So, but also we wanted our kid to be able to personally know his grandparents. And then we moved here looking for this better quality of life, right? And I wanted to touch on this point. This move was made possible by, of course, technology, right? But this move was made possible by being with EXP, right? By being able to work, and this is a shameless plug, on a cloud-based company, right? Where everything is meant to be done from behind a computer screen and from your phone. So this transition, and having a good sized team in Connecticut, but this transition has been almost seamless, right? I was already doing video calls and buyer presentations and listing presentations through camera, even while I was living there, right? So moving here didn't make that much of a change, but the support, the continual support from my wife, and now my kid, right? What I'm getting out of life now, being in this field, right? Having this career of being a real estate agent, having this type of flexibility, is I can take time off, in a little bit when he gets home from school, and then we can go walk around the block, and then I come and I work a couple more hours, and then we can have dinner, and then we go back and forth by doing that, right? If I had a full-time job, a 9 to 5, I may not be able to do these things.
How did your mindset as a business owner change with your kid? Did this create more motivation to go out and work harder? Obviously now you have someone else you have to take care of, and like I haven't had children personally myself, but I've talked to a lot of my friends that did, and they're, you can love your wife or love your husband, but there's a difference when you have a child that's, your blood. So how did that change your long-term perspective? I know you're talking about acquiring real estate. You're now putting time into your revenue share business because you're obviously crushing it with production side. I mean, you're an icon agent, selling a ton of houses. But now I think I'm seeing you put more time into the residual side, the revenue share model. You're talking about acquiring real estate more. Is this so you can have that time, money, freedom later to grow with your child and have more time with them? Or how did that change your perspective on business as your family grew?
It's a great question. My grandpa, who's 93 now, he had an accident a couple of years ago, so he had to have surgery, and then he went to rehab, and he got COVID in rehab. So ever since then, he's been on a wheelchair, and he requires full-time support at home. And he was in real estate. He made a lot of money. He's been technically retired for 40 years now and living off of their investments. And it's been amazing to see that even at this age, he can afford full-time live-in care. And that really opened my eyes to what money can do for you. And then, of course, what money can do for your family and for people around you, right? So the motivation for me these days is my wife and I can make enough money for us to make a living now, no problem, right? But do we make enough for us to be in a position of my grandparents, for instance, right, where something happens to one of us at 90, can we still afford to live in the same house, right? So what I use as motivation now is I use my kid, I use my wife. I always think of, what if I'm 70? My wife is a couple of years younger than I am, and she needs a type of medication that costs $100,000 to $200,000 in order to save her life, right? And what if I look at my bank account at that point, or my investments or our investments, and I figure out that we don't have that? And I'm talking $100,000 to $200,000. It's an astronomical amount now. But in 30 years from now, if you play your cards right and if you work hard and you invest that money, it may be a small percentage of your net worth, right? But what if it's not a small percentage of my net worth at that point, because I made bad decisions now, right? I would have and what if it was $3 million for that medication? Maybe, most people couldn't afford that anyway. But if it was a couple $100,000, I may be able to afford it then. But I play these mind games with myself to make me push harder now. What if in 30 years from now, she needs that, and I couldn't provide it at that point because I didn't work hard in my 30s and 40s,
And
right?
Yeah. Sorry,
So
Go ahead.
I constantly think, and it could be her, it could be our son, right? It could be more children if we decide to have more children, right? So all of that to say, we're all given the same amount of time every day, right? And I've it's watching different videos, I've seen people work 5 hours a day making a couple $1 million a year. And I'm like, that's working smart. It has nothing to do with working 18-hour days, right? It has everything to do with working smart, right? So I want to be able to be that person, right? I want to be able to take 1 or 2 steps back, right, and strap up, and then be able to plan on how to work 5, 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, because I'm not afraid of hard work, but I'm not willing to work so hard where I sacrifice everything else. I sacrifice my time with my wife, my time with my kid, my time with my family, my time with my friends. That's can I do it for a small period of time? Yes, but I'm not willing to do it for a long period of time, right? And then it boils down on me. Can I turn 14 hours worth of work? Can I do that in 7 hours? Right. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately, right? I'm 38. By the time my kid is 15, I think I'm going to be 55. And I have to keep myself healthy, right? Because I got to be able to go and play ball with him. And I know a lot of 55, especially in my races, right? In my obstacle races, there are plenty of 55-year-olds who are fitter than I am now. But also outside of my obstacle racing world, there's a lot of 55-year-olds who can barely walk.
Yeah, 40-year-olds. It's
Yeah.
getting bad. We'll wrap it up with this last part with like the fitness side, but I want to go back just a little bit, because like to get to that, you have to have a runway where we're talking about being able to have the finances in the future. So some of you guys need to think about how to have that 5 to 10 year runway. It took me, I think most entrepreneurs make it in 5 to 10 years. 10 years is almost a guaranteed. If you find the right vehicle and you don't stop and you keep evolving, you keep studying, you're going to be successful. It's rare that doesn't happen. 5 years is possible with the technology. Now you see people do it in 2 to 3, but you can't just say like at 70, oh, now I'm going to just start this runway. Like you need to start now, like start yesterday. But
While you have energy.
yeah. And then it's a real deal, because I don't think it's appropriate for me to give the person's name, but there is one of the few people left above us in the company, someone I know personally pretty well. Their wife, their top EXP team leader, their wife came down with a really weird brain bacteria or something crazy. It was like $1 million bill that, of course, insurance didn't cover. So they'd been paying insurance forever, and all of a sudden this weird thing that didn't exist comes up, and it was like $1 million bill. They wrote a check just like boom, just like that. And then literally it was within like a year later, he had some pretty bad health issues, and it was just a check. So this is incredibly important, guys. You're living in the stresses and pressure now, but in the future, when it actually is needed, you need to have had that runway built today. So no matter what you're going through today, prepare for your tomorrow, because you could save your loved one, you could save yourself, you could save your grandchildren, you could save your best friend's children, which is the next level. Take care of yourself, then your family, then your friends, then their families, then your community, then the country, then the world. It's kind of the order I look at things. But I think you have a noble goal, and I think you're living life right and you're thinking correctly. But let's finish up with like the health side, because I didn't know you were doing all that type of stuff, because I've been on and off a health nut throughout my life. I've let it go a few times, and you had some injuries, and sometimes let it go. But it sounds like you're doing like marathon, like what's it called? Not marathon.
Obstacle races. Yeah.
Obstacle races.
Yeah.
Okay. When did you get into that? You're doing CrossFit and all that type of stuff too, or?
I joined CrossFit a couple of years back. Actually, I joined CrossFit just before COVID for a year, and then COVID came, and I didn't do it for a couple of more years. And then with the baby, in the beginning, it was easy because we could bring the baby. He was small enough where he didn't, and it was early in the morning, so he was still sleeping. Yep. And then for the last probably 8 months, I've been consistent again. And there's a good lesson to be learned in this alone, right? So before CrossFit, I went to the gym on my own, and I worked out, probably got 40 minutes, maybe 50 minutes out of that hour that I was at the gym. I found success within a group, right? And it doesn't matter, so I've been to two different CrossFits, right? One in each state, but almost every morning, I go at 5 a.m. So, and the 5 a.m. Here in North Carolina is packed, like some 35 people there, right? And I'm like, it's the most packed class in my CrossFit is the 5 a.m. And I started looking at that from a different. I stepped back and I started looking at that. I'm like, it's not easy going to the gym at 5 a.m. Yet all of these people are here, and this class sells out. If you don't sign up early enough, it'll sell out, right? So it's by being in the presence of all of those people, and of course I'm probably one of the weakest links in that whole class, and I'm okay, but like they've been there for so long and they're super consistent, right? So some of them will finish the workout much faster, and they'll come and they'll fully support you. And I'm taking a whole life lesson out of just being in CrossFit in Connecticut, CrossFit in North Carolina. I don't really care much for the brand and the CrossFit games and all that. I go because I need a workout, right? I go because I need to keep my health in check. I go because I can push myself little by little every day. So when racing season comes, then I can do well, right? So, but by being around like-minded people who are pushing themselves, you end up pushing yourself so much better, right? Which is the same concept, for being here in the Agent Wolf Pack, right? We joined the company. We saw Mike's video online. We joined the company because we thought Mike was going to be able to provide great support, which he does indeed. And of course, meeting you was a bonus on top of that. But like by being in this environment, we just came from the shareholder summit in Florida, and like there's 4,000 agents here most of them are icon agents. So most of them will sell 30, 40, 50 properties a year just by being in that environment alone. was, is a game changer every year. So last year I didn't even make icon, but I went anyway. I'm like, I want more of that. I want the group mentality, right? So when it comes to the health part of it, my comfort zone allows me to go out and run 3 or 4 times a week as a workout. I need to push myself out of that comfort zone every day. I found in the group classes, whether it's CrossFit or anything else that you want, I now have one responsibility. I got to get up at 4:30. I have a shot of espresso and I have to bring myself to the gym. After I get there, my whole outlook changes. Up until I get to the gym, I don't want to go to the gym at all. But once I get there and I see the same people that I work out with every day, my whole outlook changes. And there's never been a workout that I regretted.
Yep.
Never. You'll never regret a single workout.
That's how it always is. It's not running. That's the difficult thing. It's getting up, making the effort to put the shoes on, and then starting the run. Once you're in the run mode, and it's just like you talking about cold calling. We talking about that off camera, but it's not hard to cold call. It's that first cold call, maybe the first couple. Once you're in the mood, then you can cold call all day, and it's no big deal. Then you go to sleep and wake up. The next day, that phone's still heavy. It's that initiation process, making that energy start moving. And one last thing before I go, it's like, out of curiosity, just for myself, I'm sure others, those 35 people in that room, my guesstimate is you're going to see they're either still in athletic competition some form, or they're an entrepreneur. I may be wrong. How does that group break up? 35 people. I don't know if you know what they all do, but that's a different mentality than the normal mentality to get up that early and go to the gym. And then also, I think why you're so committed to doing it is because the accountability factor. You don't want to let them down. They've shared enjoyment and it became friends with you. And now if you don't show up, you're disrespecting, you almost feel like you're disrespecting the group, and they are pulling you forward. And then if any one of them gets weak at the weak link, the wolf pack, I guess you could say, we pull each other back up and get everybody back in the right mindset. And this is what a family does and what a pack does. And but out of curiosity, like, do you know what they all do? Or are they all entrepreneurs? Or like
they're we every now and then the instructor, the coach will ask around, what's your favorite dessert? What's your favorite place to go on vacation? And then of course, every now and then they'll do, what do you do for a living? So in my class, I'm the only real estate agent, which is great. There are a bunch of attorneys, software developers, engineers. Not that I want to, I don't want to make an overall statement here that they all do well in life, because I don't know the particulars of everybody's life there. But it all seems like they're all progressing in life, from what I can see from the outside. Right? It's not easy to get an engineer degree. It's not easy to become an attorney. There are a couple of contractors. There's like 4 or 5 pastors in there. So again, you don't simply wake up and say, I'm going to go to this 5 a.m. class. And I can go to the gym at any other time. I choose to go to that 5 a.m. because it really sets my my tone for my day. Right. Like most days, that 5 a.m. class has been the hardest thing I've done all day. And I like it that way, right? Let me eat my frogs in the morning. Let me take care of this here first, right? And by being there, there's always, like, it's good to see people with who on the outside look to have less physical abilities lift twice the weight that I can lift. I'm like, how? Like, you're much skinnier than I am, but you're lifting twice the weight. So it tells me they're persistent, right? And it's not what it seems on the outside. It's not the outside looks. It's really how long they've been doing and how consistent they've been. So it really, it's a game changer for me. Again, whether it's CrossFit or any other, my wife used to go to this boot camp in the morning as well, and it was the same thing. Like, you go. I'm basically looking for the like-minded people, or the people who are doing something in life, and usually I'm able to find that at the 5 a.m. At a gym, probably anywhere in the country, because 5 a.m. is not easy to get up to go.
No, they're always going to have some type of discipline. So if they're not master successful, they're in the progressive path of doing the right things in that incremental step process to get them to become successful. And this is a good podcast. I enjoyed because I didn't know all these things about you, and so I had fun. If they want to follow you, anybody else wants to even, work with you potentially. So if you guys are an agent, our EXP really business model here is global. So actually we're in over 20 nations. You can partner with Alex really from anywhere and join this team. And like we're talking about, you get access to the value he provides just through technology, right? We do everything globally now. So how do they get a hold of you? Where do you want to go follow you? Instagram, YouTube, anything you want to point out? And then we'll put everything below here in the description box below. So you guys can go down there and find it real easily. But any word of mouth of where you want to direct people, or anywhere where you're kind of focused on your social media that would be the best place to follow you?
Yeah, IG has been my main focus. I usually use Facebook as a portfolio just to, for sale, properties for sale and just sold. But IG is where I really spend a lot of time, and I'm now shifting from just focusing on that short content to making longer content material as well. So, and of course, should you decide to partner with us. We're doing this in 3 languages. We're doing this in Portuguese. We're doing this in Spanish, and of course English as well. And we've been able to get a lot of people a good head start because we've been able to communicate with them in their primary language, right? There are plenty of good agents out there who will speak Spanish, who will speak Portuguese, and of course many other languages. And it's much easier to get them started if you can. Same thing with clients, right? If you can meet them what they are, where they are. Sure. My IG is Alex Camargo Realtor, and of course you're going to put that down. Facebook is the same thing, and YouTube is going to be the same thing as well. There's going to be some good content on YouTube.
Nice. I'm excited to see what you do, man, over the coming years. You got some good momentum building right now. Thank you for coming on the show here today, guys. We're going to get this out to you and on to the next one. But other than that, Alex, you have a great day. And I'll see you guys when I see you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah.